The phone rang, slicing through the quiet of the nursing home's sleepy afternoon like a sharp edge across still water. I picked it up instinctively, expecting maybe the front desk or a reminder for my next physical therapy session. But the moment I heard that voice, familiar, distant, and sharp with formality, a wave of warmth and sorrow rushed through my chest like heat rising after frost. My throat caught. But before I could get out more than a breath, Daniel spoke. His tone clipped and matter-of-fact, like we were picking up a conversation from earlier that never existed. "Mom, I've been tight on cash lately. Do you think you could sell the house under your name just to help me out for now?" There was no preamble. No, how are you? No, I've missed you. Just the ask. Just the money. I stood frozen, the receiver pressed lightly to my ear. My eyes drifted toward the window. Outside, the maple tree at the edge of the yard stood bare, its limbs shaking under a cold wind. Fragile, quiet, stripped of color. I knew that kind of nakedness. Years of silence, of being slowly forgotten, of fading into the background until even your children forget the sound of your voice. Daniel hadn't visited in over 2 years. Not a birthday card. Not a phone call. Not a single spontaneous drop-in. And now, the first words he spoke to me were about the house. My house. The one Thomas and I had built with our hands and our hopes. Life at the nursing home had become a quiet loop, like an old cassette that kept rewinding and replaying. Wake up at 7 o'clock, breakfast by 7:30, group games at 9 o'clock, lunch at 12:30, some crossword puzzles, some afternoon TV reruns, then dinner at 5 o'clock. Lights out by 8 o'clock and then repeat. Every day an echo of the one before. No surprises, no changes, just the slow drip of time, measured in meal trays and hallway announcements. I had been here for 2 years to the day, and deep down I knew from the moment I rolled my small suitcase into room 113 that something had shifted forever. Daniel had already made his decision. He had put me here to be taken care of, yes, but also to be managed, filed away, folded into a neat little corner of his life where he could say, "She's safe," and no longer think about me. Not once had he called just to chat. Not once had he asked how my knees were, or whether I'd found a new book club, or whether I still played the piano in the activity room. He hadn't asked about anything at all. And yet, every time another resident got a visit from their child, a warm embrace, a new sweater, pastries in a paper bag, something inside me folded inward, especially when it was Blanche. She lived across the hall. Her daughter Laura came every Sunday like clockwork, arms full of fresh fruit, photos, and laughter, sometimes with that sweet grandson in tow, bright eyes, messy curls, a giggle that could soften stone. I'd pretend to be walking past on some errand, but I always lingered just a second too long, watching, listening. They'd be on the little sofa, sipping tea and retelling stories like they were stitched into the same quilt. They laughed easily, unguarded. Once I saw Laura wipe a crumb off her mother's cheek and kiss her on the forehead. That moment broke something open in me. Not from jealousy, but from memory, because I remembered a time Daniel looked at me like that too, when he was small, when I was his whole world. "Missing your son again, Mrs. Carter?" Megan, the nurse, had asked once. She was kind, but too perceptive. I'd smiled, a brittle thing. "No, just dry eyes. Happens all the time." Then I turned quickly and went back to my room, praying she wouldn't ask anything more. My room was modest. A single bed, a small wardrobe, a desk by the window, and a television older than my microwave back home. It was tidy, but it didn't feel like mine. On the wall was a photo from our 40th wedding anniversary, Thomas and I smiling like two people who believed the next chapter would be slow, peaceful, and long. That picture held dreams that never came to pass. 6 months after it was taken, Thomas collapsed from a sudden stroke while making tea in the kitchen. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. No time for goodbyes, just silence. After he died, I stayed in the house. Our house. The one we'd painted together, fixed up over weekends, filled with music and morning coffee. The one where we grew tomatoes and planted the maple tree out front. Every hallway held echoes of his voice. Every drawer had his handwriting on something. Even the chair by the window kept the shape of his back. I tried to keep it up, mowing the lawn myself, shoveling snow. But then one icy morning in December, I slipped in the bathroom and broke my leg. Daniel and Heather came by for a few days, hovering, whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. By the end of the month, they gently but firmly pushed for the nursing home. "Mom, it's not safe anymore." At least here, someone can help you if you fall again. We'll sleep better knowing you're taken care of. I didn't argue. I was tired. Grief had settled into my bones by then. I told myself they were right, that this was the practical adult choice, that I didn't want to become a burden. I had always prided myself on not being in the way. So Daniel signed the admission forms. Heather organized the transport. They helped me unpack, kissed me goodbye at the front lobby, promised to visit often. I remember waving from the door and watching their car disappear. That was 742 days ago. They never came back. To be fair, the nursing home wasn't as terrible as I feared. The staff were kind, the meals decent. There were bingo nights and trivia, even a gardening club for the ones with steady hands. I made friends. I told myself I was lucky. But what I missed most was the soul of the house. Not the structure, but the life Thomas and I had built within it. The crack in the kitchen tile where he dropped the waffle iron. The creaky floorboard by the entryway that he always meant to fix but never did. The shelf he built for my cookbooks, slightly crooked but perfect. That house wasn't just property. It was memory, legacy, love in physical form. We had saved for that house our entire adult lives. Factory work, night shifts, skipping vacations. Every dollar pinched. We didn't have much, but we had purpose. We gave Daniel everything we had. We even gave him the master bedroom when he was old enough for his own space. He never wanted for anything, not once. We made sure of it. When he got into a top university, we cried. When he got his first job, we celebrated like he'd won the lottery. When he bought his first condo, we liquidated almost everything we had left in savings to help with the down payment. Thomas said it was what parents do. I agreed. And back then, it felt worth it. We used to say, our love made this possible. But people change. Priorities shift. Love doesn't always age well in everyone's hands. And now, all these years later, Daniel's voice on the phone didn't carry any affection, only expectation. He didn't call to reconnect. He called because he wanted one final withdrawal from a life he no longer visited. He didn't ask how I was. He asked for the house, and that was the moment I realized he had already decided I no longer lived there, but I did. In every brick, in every nail, in every sacrifice, and I wasn't ready to let it go, not for him, not like this. Mrs. Carter, it's time for your meds. Megan's gentle voice pulled me out of my thoughts like a hand tugging me back from the past. Thank you, Megan. I quickly wiped the corners of my eyes and stood up. Every afternoon around this time, the nurses made their rounds with medication. Megan, barely in her 20s, had the kind of patience you couldn't teach, especially with residents our age. You seem a little off today, Mrs. Carter, she said kindly, handing me my pill box while pouring a glass of water. Feeling a bit homesick? No, I replied with a soft smile. Just didn't sleep too well last night. Feeling a little off, that's all. I took the pills in one gulp, not wanting to linger. Megan hesitated, then said quietly, Your son hasn't visited in a long time. Would you like me to help you give him a call? I waved it off. No need. He's busy with work. Don't want to bother him. She sighed softly and didn't push. I knew she meant well, but some wounds only ache more when touched. Back in my room, I returned to my spot by the window. The courtyard outside shimmered under the dappled light filtering through the thick green canopy. A few residents were strolling slowly, some with walkers, others in wheelchairs being gently pushed by staff. They chatted quietly, faces warm in the sun. Life moved here like a song hummed under one's breath. Soft, steady, easy to miss. And then, out of nowhere, Daniel popped into my mind again. I remembered how Thomas and I used to take him to the park every weekend when he was little. He loved the swings, always begged to be pushed higher. His laughter rang like tiny bells in the wind. But somewhere along the way, that laughter changed. Maybe it was when he hit middle school and started building his own world. Maybe it was college when the phone calls home slowed to a trickle. Maybe it was after he got married, when his orbit shifted to another woman, a new family. I opened the drawer in my nightstand and took out the old photo album, the only personal item I'd insisted on bringing with me. Page by page, I turned through the years. There he was at the pool, grinning through splashes. There he was in his cap and gown, smiling stiffly at his high school graduation. And there he was on his wedding day, standing next to Heather, beaming like he had the whole world in his hands. I stared at those frozen moments, a lump rising in my throat. Daniel, I whispered, do you even remember your mother? Just then, my phone rang. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered cautiously. Mom, it's me. Daniel? I froze, heart hammering. My palms turned clammy in an instant. 2 years. This was the first time he'd called. Daniel, it's really you, I blurted out. I'm doing well, really well. How about you? Work keeping you busy? Are you taking care of yourself? The questions tumbled out of me one after another, desperate, as if his voice might disappear if I didn't fill the silence. I'm okay, Mom, just been swamped lately, Daniel said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. You need to take care of your health, sweetheart. Don't overdo it. I hesitated, then added gently, if you get a chance, maybe come visit. The food here's decent. The place is quiet. I've been doing all right. It was a careful suggestion, but my heart clung to it, hoping he might actually show up. There was a pause on the line. Mom, I really can't get away right now, he finally said. Then his tone shifted, deeper, hesitant. Actually, I called because there's something I need to talk to you about. A chill crept over me. What is it? I tried to sound calm, but a shadow had already formed in my chest, like a storm cloud thickening just beyond the horizon. So, I've hit a bit of a financial snag. I was wondering if you could transfer the house to my name just for now. He said it so casually, like asking if I felt like grabbing fried chicken tomorrow. I went completely still. 2 years, no calls, no visits, and now his first words to me were about the house Thomas and I saved for our entire lives, the home we built from the ground up in our 50s, the place that held our love, our labor, and the memories I've clung to since he died. And Daniel wanted me to hand it over like it was nothing. Mom, are you still there? He asked when I didn't answer. I'm here. My voice was trembling now. Daniel, that house, it's all your father and I had after a lifetime of work. It's the only thing I have left. I may be in assisted living now, but who knows what could happen. I need that security. Mom, you don't need to worry. He cut in, a little more urgently. If the house is in my name, I can use it as collateral to get through this rough patch. Once things smooth out, everything will be fine. I promise I'll take care of you. His words were smooth, but all I could hear was the cold echo of absence. How could I believe he'd take care of me? He hadn't even managed to show up in 2 years. Daniel, this is a lot to take in, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. I'll need some time to think it over. Mom, you're not exactly young anymore, he snapped, the irritation seeping through. What's the point of keeping a house you're not living in? You've got a bed, meals, nurses, you're not missing anything. And I've been covering your expenses. My brow furrowed. I sat up straighter, my voice suddenly firm. No, Daniel. The fees here are paid with my pension and your father's survivor benefits. You haven't paid a dime. Silence, cold and heavy, like frost settling in a room. Then he spoke again, and there was something harder in his tone. Do you not trust me, Mom? I'm your son. I'm not trying to cheat you. I'm out of options. It's not that I don't trust you, I sighed, each word weighing heavier than the last. It's just, this isn't a small thing. I need to think. For how long? He pressed. I don't have much time. I need the money by next week. I closed my eyes, feeling a headache pulse behind them. At least give me a few days. Another pause. Then, fine, I'll call you in 3 days. And just like that, the line went dead. I sat at the edge of my bed, the phone still clutched in my hand like it had turned to stone. The coldness that rose in my chest wasn't just disappointment. It was something deeper, something that froze me from the inside out. My son had called, not to ask how I was, not to say he missed me, but to see what was left of me to take. He hadn't remembered this number because he cared. He'd remembered it because I still had something he could cash in. The tears came slow, welling until they blurred the frame on the wall. I turned to it, to the photo of Thomas and me. Our final anniversary. Thomas, I whispered, my voice cracking, since you've been gone, I've tried to be a good mom. I really have. But our son, he sees me as nothing more than an ATM. The next few days felt like my heart had been dropped into a spinning paint tray, every emotion bleeding into the next. Part of me was chilled to the bone by Daniel's words. The house was going to be mine anyway. But another part of me couldn't stop worrying. What if he really was in trouble? What if he truly needed help? After all, he's my son. Mrs. Carter, you haven't been eating much lately, Megan said gently as she knocked and pushed in the lunch cart. I forced a smile. I'm all right. Just a little homesick, I suppose. She narrowed her eyes slightly. Did your son call you again? I nodded without a word. Some things, if you speak them aloud, only deepen the hurt. Sure enough, on the afternoon of the third day, my phone rang again. Hello? Mom, have you made a decision? Straight to the point. I gripped the phone a little tighter and took a deep breath. Daniel, I just need to ask you honestly, why do you need this much money all of a sudden? Did something happen with your business? There was a pause, then a vague, dismissive reply. Yes, some issues came up. I need to free up some cash. His voice lacked any real urgency, as if he were brushing me off. Mom, can we skip the questions? I just need you to tell me, are you going to transfer the house or not? I tried to slow things down to make him see where I was coming from. Daniel, that house is everything your father and I worked for. I'm scared, son. Something happens to me, if I get sick or need more care, what then? I'd have nothing left. Mom, come on, you're in a facility. You're fed, housed, taken care of, and that house was going to be mine eventually. What's the difference if you give it to me now or later? He said so matter-of-factly, like it was just a line item on a checklist. That one sentence, it was going to be mine anyway, cut deeper than anything else. In that moment, I couldn't help but wonder, in his eyes, am I still a person, or just a walking estate waiting to be liquidated? Mom, don't drag this out anymore. Let's just get the paperwork done, he snapped when I didn't respond. His tone had turned sharp, impatient. I bit down hard, steadying my voice. Daniel, I still need more time to think. Fine, he said, 3 more days. But after that, I need a definite answer. And just like last time, he hung up before I could reply. I slowly set the phone down and sank onto the edge of my bed, numb all over. 2 years without a single visit, and now my son, once the pride of my life, sounded no different from a debt collector, pressuring me to hand over the only thing I have left. He hadn't asked how I was. He hadn't even pretended to care. All he wanted was what was under my name. I stared up at the ceiling, and the tears began to fall, one by one, silently. I couldn't believe this was the same boy who used to laugh on the swing set and shout, "Hi, Mommy." Hi. That sweet, giggling voice felt like it belonged to someone else's child now. That night, I tossed and turned until morning, sleep never arriving. I weighed everything in my mind over and over again. If I gave him the house, I'd be surrendering my last safety net. But if I didn't, would he do something reckless? Would he cut me off completely? Would he hate me? The next morning, just as I'd finished getting dressed and was about to step outside for some air, my phone rang again. This time it was Heather. Hi, Evelyn. How are you feeling these days? Her voice was bright and breezy, as if she were calling with holiday wishes. I'm fine, I replied curtly. Just a little back pain lately. Oh, no. You really have to take care of yourself, she chirped, then without missing a beat shifted gears. So about what Daniel mentioned yesterday about the house, have you had a chance to think it over? I didn't answer her question. Instead, I cut straight to mine. Heather, what's really going on? Why are you suddenly so desperate for the house? There was a pause on the other end. Then her voice dropped low, shaky, almost tearful. Evelyn, I'll be honest with you. Daniel got into some bad investments, and we're in a lot of debt. It's bad. There are people outside our building every day. We're afraid to go home. My brow furrowed, heart sinking. Investment losses? Debt collectors? This was far more serious than what Daniel had let on. How much do you owe? I asked, my voice tight. She inhaled sharply, and then came the number. About 300,000. I felt a chill snake through my chest. 300,000. That was nearly the full value of the house. How did it get this bad? I could barely keep my voice steady as my mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Heather's voice quivered as she explained. Daniel was doing futures trading. He made a little money at first, then the market crashed and he lost everything. He borrowed more to cover the losses from loan sharks. Now they're banging on our door every day. We don't even feel safe sleeping there. My head buzzed like a struck gong. And where are you staying now? At a friend's place, she murmured, in their guest room. Evelyn, please, we're begging you. If you sign over the house, Daniel can use it as collateral to get a loan, pay off the debt, and stabilize things. We promise once this is over, we'll repay you. We'll make sure you have the best care. Truly. I sat there in silence, the weight of it all pressing down like wet cement. If what she was saying was true, this was a crisis. But if I handed over the house, what did I have left? I was an old woman. My body ached. My balance was shaky, my future uncertain. That house was my last safety net. Without it, who would catch me? Can you really pay me back? It was the question I dreaded most, and the one I needed answered. Of course we will, Heather said quickly, her tone urgent, bordering on frantic. You're Daniel's mother. He'd never lie to you. Just help us through this, and we'll take care of you, I swear. We'll get you the best nurses, everything you need. I leaned against the wall, eyes drifting to the window. Out on the lawn, a couple of squirrels darted across the grass, chasing each other up a tree. And suddenly, I felt this deep ache. Not for the money or the house, but to simply see my son. Just once, just to look at his face. Could you come see me? I asked softly. It's been 2 years. I haven't seen either of you in 2 years. Heather hesitated. I could feel the pause stretch. Evelyn, we really want to, but right now everything's upside down. Once we've handled this situation, we'll absolutely come visit, but please, can we just take care of the house first? I didn't budge. I still need a little more time to think. Heather's voice sharpened. Mom, this isn't the time to think. We're out of time. These people are dangerous. Every minute we wait could cost us everything. But I wasn't shaken. I kept my voice steady. I understand. I'll get back to you soon. There was a pause on her end, and then, barely masking her frustration, she said, All right, we'll be waiting for your good news. And the line went dead. I set the phone down and slumped into my chair. The longer I sat there, the heavier everything felt. Was Daniel truly drowning in debt, or had they crafted an entire performance just to make me give in? I couldn't carry the weight of it alone anymore. So I decided to talk to Blanche, the one person here I truly trusted. Her daughter was a lawyer too. Maybe between her wisdom and her daughter's expertise, I could find some clarity. I knocked gently on her door. Blanche, can I talk to you for a bit? She opened it and immediately pulled me inside the moment she saw my face. Evelyn, sit down. What happened? I sat on the edge of her armchair and told her everything, every call, every word, every knot that had twisted tighter in my chest over the past few days. Her expression grew darker as I spoke. Evelyn, this doesn't sound good, she said bluntly. Your son hasn't spoken to you in 2 years, and now the first thing out of his mouth is asking for your house. I hate to say it, but it smells like manipulation. You think they're lying? I asked, my voice thin and shaking. I'm not saying they made it all up, but I'd bet good money the debt isn't as bad as they're claiming. They're banking on you folding under pressure and handing over your last piece of security. Blanche never sugarcoated things, and in that moment I was glad for it. I felt like I'd been dropped into a tub of ice water. What should I do? I don't want to push him over the edge, but I can't give up everything either. My daughter's coming by this afternoon, she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'll ask her to sit down with you. She's sharp, and she'll give you the legal side of things. Just hang in there. Thank you, I said from the bottom of my heart. That evening, Blanche's daughter Laura did come. She wore a tailored blazer and carried a tablet, looking every bit the kind of woman who didn't waste words. She sat across from me, listened patiently as I explained the entire situation, then nodded. First of all, Mrs. Carter, she said firmly, the house is in your name, it's your legal property. As long as you're of sound mind and body, no one can force you to transfer ownership. Not your son, not a creditor, no one. I nodded slowly. But what if he tries to apply for guardianship? If he gets that, couldn't he access everything? Laura shook her head at once. That's not how it works. Guardianship is for individuals who are mentally incapacitated or unable to care for themselves. You are living independently, you're lucid and physically stable. No court would ever approve that petition. I exhaled a breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. That's been my biggest fear, I confessed. That if I say no, he'll find some legal way around me. He can't, she said firmly. He would have to prove in court that you're mentally unfit and incapable of managing your affairs, and clearly that's not the case. Her words settled into me like a stone finally finding the bottom of a well. My advice, she continued, don't leave the door open an inch. Be clear. If you want to offer to help with a small amount, fine. But under no circumstance should you sign over that house. That's your foundation. And if he keeps pushing, if he threatens me? I asked. Laura didn't hesitate. Refuse. If he becomes aggressive or makes threats, call the police immediately. I nodded. The pain in my chest hadn't gone away, but the fear was finally retreating. Yes, it hurt deeply that my son had come to me not out of love, but need. But I couldn't let that pain blind me into giving away everything I had left. 3 days later, right on cue, Daniel called again. Mom, have you made a decision? Same tone, same bluntness, straight to the point. I took a deep breath. Daniel, I want to see you in person. Let's talk face to face. Mom, I'm really busy. I don't have time to go all the way to the nursing home. Just tell me straight. Are you going to transfer the house or not? His voice was cool, dismissive. He clearly had no interest in a visit. My tone hardened. If you can't even spare time to look me in the eye, then I have absolutely no reason to hand over my house. There was a long silence on the other end, and then, as if it pained him to say it, he muttered, Fine. I'll come tomorrow afternoon. True to his word, Daniel showed up the next day. He looked worse than I remembered. Thinner, dark circles under his eyes, skin sallow and tight over his cheekbones. It was clear life hadn't been kind to him. Mom, he said stiffly from the doorway. Daniel. I swallowed the ache in my throat and gestured for him to sit. I don't have a lot of time, so let's get to the point, he said, perching on the edge of the chair like he was ready to bolt. Have you made up your mind about the house? I looked at him squarely and asked, I heard you're in serious debt. Is that true? His eyebrow twitched, but he nodded quickly. Yeah, I made some bad investments. Took a big hit. Spat about 300 grand. We're basically squatting at a friend's place now. I kept my gaze steady. Then tell me something, Daniel. Why didn't you come see me these past 2 years? Not even a phone call? His eyes darted to the side, and he cleared his throat. The work's been nonstop. Things got hectic. Hectic enough to make you forget you have a mother? My voice cracked slightly. He didn't answer, just lowered his head and gave a weak shake. I swallowed hard, keeping my emotions in check. Daniel, I understand you're here because you're desperate, but you need to understand something too. I have nothing left to lose. I can't give away my last lifeline. I can't give away my safety net. Mom, don't say that, he said, softening his tone. I'm just asking to use it for now. Once things get better, I'll take care of you, I promise. There it was again. The promise without the apology, no remorse for the silence, no acknowledgement of the hurt. I'm willing to help with a portion of your debt, I said slowly, deliberately, but I won't give you the house. His face tightened instantly. What? You won't? Why not? Because that house is everything your father and I worked for. I held his gaze. At my age, I don't get a second shot. If I get sick or something happens, that house is my security. It's my future. I will take care of you. Why don't you believe that? He snapped, his frustration rising. I let out a bitter chuckle. You mean like you've taken care of me for the past 2 years? His face fell visibly, sharply. The room went quiet. Mom, are you blaming me? His voice jumped, sharp and defensive. I nodded slowly, not blaming, just telling the truth. I believe you're my son, but I believe even more that at my age, safety means keeping the keys to my own life in my own hands. God, Mom, you're so selfish. Daniel suddenly burst out, his voice rising with frustration. I'm drowning here and you can't even help me this once? I didn't flinch at his anger. I kept my voice steady, calm. I told you already, I can help you with some money, but the house, absolutely not. He stared at me, eyes narrowed. How much? 50,000. I said quietly but firmly. He blinked, stunned. Then he slapped his knee hard and barked a humorless laugh, angry, unraveling. 50 grand? That's nothing. I owe 300 That's all I can manage, I replied, unwavering. I live off my pension and your father's survivor benefits. 50,000 is my limit. It's not a gesture, it's a stretch. He was trembling now, barely containing himself. You don't even see me as your son anymore, do you? He snapped. I'm at rock bottom and you just sit back and watch me rot? Daniel, I'm not letting you rot. I inhaled slowly, keeping my tone even. If you're really in crisis, 50,000 is real help. But the way you came in demanding the house, it felt like you were carving a piece out of me. Did it ever occur to you how little I have left to lose? He shot up from the chair like a spring. I don't want your scraps, he shouted. I want the house. That house is worth 300 grand. It's everything I need to fix this. You could help me, really help me, but you just won't. I stood my ground, staring him down. No, that house is your father's and mine. It's our life's work. It's the only safety I have left. If you won't take the money, then I can't help you. His face turned a shade I'd never seen on him, ashen with rage. In his eyes, I saw something terrifying, not just anger, but humiliation and threat. He clenched his jaw, voice dropping to a growl. Don't push me, Mom. If you're going to be this stubborn, don't blame me for what happens next. My heart skipped. I gripped the arms of my chair to steady myself. What are you talking about? I asked, raising my voice slightly. I'm your mother. He didn't answer, just stared at me with a look so cold, so foreign, I barely recognized him. A few seconds passed. Then he turned sharply, yanked the door open so hard I thought it might come off the hinges. You'll regret this, he spat without even looking back. And just like that, he was gone. His footsteps echoing down the hallway until they disappeared. The door slammed behind him with a violent bang, and the silence that followed felt thick, unnatural. I sat there, frozen on the edge of the bed, fingers like ice, chest caved in with the weight of it all. The moment he walked out, the strength drained right out of me. I collapsed back into the mattress like a balloon slowly deflating, limbs heavy, breath short. The door hung half open, but I didn't have the will to close it. I couldn't even remember if I'd slept that night. My mind was a foggy mess, looping the same words over and over again. Don't blame me for what happens next. That one line hung in the air like a blade, invisible and poised, ready to fall. The next morning, Megan pushed open the door with my breakfast tray and froze. Mrs. Carter, did you not sleep last night? You look unwell. Should I get the nurse? I shook my head slowly. I need a favor, I murmured. Can you help me make a phone call? Minutes later, I was seated in the corner of the activity room with a phone pressed to my ear. Laura's calm voice came through on the other end. Are you okay? I need to do something, I said, my voice low and deliberate. I can't just sit here and let my son back me into a corner. Laura didn't hesitate. I understand, then let's take 2 immediate steps. 1, we'll establish a protective trust for the property. 2, we'll freeze any transfer or authorization on the house. That's the safest way to secure your rights. Later that morning, she took me to the bank that worked with the nursing home. The branch manager and a notary guided me through the process. We transferred my accounts, froze any transfer rights, and revoked every prior authorization linked to Daniel's name. You're protected now, Laura said softly as we left. From today on, no one touches that house, not a brick, not a blade of grass, without your consent. I nodded, and something sharp and clean passed through my chest. It wasn't pain, it was clarity. By the time we returned to the facility, my legs were trembling, but my spine was straight. Blanche spotted me from the window-side table in the dining hall and hurried over. You went to the bank? She asked, eyes gleaming. Good for you, Evelyn. That was exactly the right move. I gave her a weak smile. I used to think endurance was a mother's virtue, but now I know if you don't defend your line, it will swallow you whole. That evening, Megan brought my dinner and leaned in with a quiet voice. Mrs. Carter, someone called the front desk earlier. Said they'll be visiting you tomorrow. The name they gave was Daniel Carter. I nodded, no surprise there. This time, I would be ready. Daniel arrived the next afternoon, right on schedule, but he wasn't empty-handed. He carried a bag of fruit and a manila folder labeled Family Authorization Agreement. When Megan called to let me know he was at the front desk, her voice was hesitant. Mrs. Carter, your son's here. He says he's here to visit, but he's not in the best mood. Let him in, I said calmly. The door creaked open. Daniel stood there in a wrinkled suit, holding a bouquet of flowers, looking for all the world like someone trying to play pitiful and presentable at the same time. Mom, he said with a tight smile, I thought about yesterday. Things got too tense. I see now I was wrong. I should have come to see you more. Daniel, I said gently, gesturing to the chair, sit down. He set the flowers on the table and placed the file in front of me. I had a friend help me draw up a simple family property agreement. Nothing complicated, just something that gives me authorization to use the house as collateral. It won't affect your living rights at all. He tried to sound calm, even reasonable, but his eyes betrayed him, darting, restless, too hungry for a yes. I didn't touch the file. I've retained legal counsel, I said softly. The house is now in a trust. The assets are frozen. Any transfer must go through legal review. That document, I nodded at the folder, has no legal standing. The smile vanished from his face. What are you saying? He asked, voice low, words clipped. You're going to take me to court? This isn't a lawsuit, Daniel, I replied as I stood. My voice was steady, cold with purpose. It's called self-protection. I'm at the age where I'm your son isn't enough to make me gamble away everything I've got left. He stood too, eyes flaring. You've been brainwashed. Was it Blanche? That damn lawyer? No one put this in my head, I said. It was your silence these past 2 years that taught me everything I needed to know. His face darkened. You really think you can stop me? You think this is over? He turned to go, but I stopped him. Daniel. He froze. If you don't want this to get uglier, don't try again. He didn't look back. Mom, don't push me, he growled. I sighed. I didn't push you. You walked yourself here. He stormed out the door, rattling violently behind him. The metal handle clanged so loud it startled 2 elderly residents in the hallway. As soon as the door slammed, I pressed the discreet little button Megan had installed beneath my nightstand. The audio recorder clicked on. Everything, his threats, the offer, the shouting, had been captured. Minutes later, Laura arrived with the facility manager. I handed over the recording and the so-called family agreement. If he shows up again, Laura said as she flipped through the pages, her lip curling in disdain, we'll file for a restraining order. This isn't just an invalid contract, it's coercion. I nodded. I don't want to drag him into court, but I won't let him touch another cent. That night, Blanche poured us both a cup of red tea in the common room. She lifted hers with a grin. Now you're finally living like a woman who knows her worth. We smiled at each other. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I could breathe. Laura, true to her word, didn't hesitate. Days later, she personally filed a preliminary notice of restraining order with the nursing home administration, placing it securely in their records. If he tries to enter the premises again or contacts you in any way, she told me, her tone firm, we call the police. No more warnings. I nodded, and for the first time, I understood. Real safety doesn't come from backing down. It comes from drawing your line and refusing to let anyone cross it. That afternoon, Blanche was sitting by my window, carefully sewing a missing button onto the sleeve of my cardigan. Her hands moved with quiet purpose, steady and practiced. The light filtered through the sheer curtain, catching the glint of her needle. She paused mid-stitch, her gaze drifting out the window for a long moment before turning to me, something thoughtful behind her eyes. Evelyn, she said slowly, her tone gentle but firm, have you ever thought about telling your story out loud? I looked up from the cup of tea I was holding. You mean, like to the other residents? I asked, surprised. Blanche shook her head and carefully set the needle and thread aside. No, I mean to more than just us, to the city, to the world maybe. She leaned forward slightly, voice softening. Your story isn't just yours anymore, it's ours. It belongs to every woman our age who's been used, overlooked, dismissed, or quietly erased. You found your voice again, Evelyn, and it's time you used it. Laura, who had been sitting across the room flipping through a binder, looked up and nodded. I know a few local radio hosts, she said, thoughtful, and even some podcast producers and social media outlets who focus on older audiences, advocacy, women's rights. If you're willing, we can start small. Use a pseudonym if you want, but your story, it could help a lot of people. You're not alone. I didn't say yes that day. I just nodded faintly and changed the subject. But that night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning like an old reel-to-reel film. I kept hearing Blanche's voice, it's time you used it. By morning, the answer was clear. I walked into the breakfast lounge and told them both, simply, let's do it. 1 week later, I sat in the modest meeting room at the care facility, across from a microphone and a woman in her 40s who introduced herself as Dana. She was warm, patient, her voice low and calm, like water lapping gently against a dock. She didn't interrupt me once, she just listened. I told my story. From the phone call that shattered 2 years of uneasy silence, to the sudden reappearance of a son I barely recognized, to the day I found out he wasn't just struggling, he was scheming. I spoke plainly. I didn't dramatize, I didn't embellish, but every word I said landed with weight. He's my son, I said at one point, voice barely above a whisper. And I never stopped loving him. But love doesn't mean surrendering your life. We women, especially of my generation, we spend our youth giving and giving to husbands, to children, to the world. Then we get old and suddenly we're not cherished anymore. We're burdens. And just when we think we've earned peace, they come for the last thing we have left, our security. The interview ended after an hour. Dana thanked me with a deep, sincere smile and promised to let me know when it aired. I returned to my room assuming that was the end of it. A small release, a quiet act of bravery. But 2 days later, the halls of the nursing home were buzzing like a hive. Did you hear? Evelyn's the voice in that podcast. God, her son sounds like a nightmare. My daughter just called to say that episode's gone viral, over 100,000 plays. Megan burst into my room mid-afternoon, out of breath and glowing with excitement. Mrs. Carter, you're famous! The Senior Rights Network called. They want you as a guest consultant for a series on financial abuse and late-life autonomy. I blinked. I had no idea a simple recording could ripple so far. But the biggest surprise came that evening. Blanche rushed into the activity room, eyes wide, voice urgent, and practically tugged me by the sleeve. You're not going to believe this, she whispered. She led me to the corner of the room and lowered her voice. One of the visitors today, middle-aged woman, nice coat, flowers in a basket, was chatting with some residents. She mentioned she used to work at Daniel's firm. Said almost casually, I worked for Daniel Carter a few years back. Always thought something was off, false reports, suspicious invoices. And that Heather, she was in on it. She helped him secure shady bank loans. Whole place stank of fraud. By the next morning, the entire nursing home knew. Laura didn't waste a second. She filed several information requests with public record offices, financial regulators, and credit agencies. Within 5 days, she handed me a thick envelope. Inside, printed records, flagged applications, matching signatures, it was all there. Daniel had been applying for high-risk, short-term loans under multiple shell businesses. Heather's name was directly tied to a falsified equipment financing form. 3 mortgage applications had been denied due to unverifiable assets, one of which had my address listed as collateral. Laura placed the folder on the table in front of me. She looked into my eyes, her expression sober and resolute. Your house. That was their final play. If you'd signed that transfer form last month, they would have flipped the deed and liquidated the equity within a few weeks. You'd be left with nothing. I stared at the papers. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with cold, icy realization. My son hadn't just asked me for help. He'd tried to gut my life from the inside out. That night, I sat at my desk for over an hour, reading every page of the documentation. Then, with a steadiness I didn't know I had, I signed a formal request for a no-contact protective order. 4 days later, the court approved it. Daniel Carter and Heather Morris were legally barred from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or my care facility. They were forbidden from making contact by phone, email, mail, or any third party. The envelope with the court seal sat quietly on my desk like a stone on water, weighty, still, final. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. What I felt was peace. Not the jubilant kind. The kind that comes when the fighting is over and you finally understand that the worst has already happened, but it didn't destroy you. Later, Laura returned with a new stack of forms. If you want, we can draft a formal disaffiliation. It's like a legal statement of independence, saying he no longer has claim to your name, your assets, your life. I nodded. Write it. I owe him nothing anymore. That day, I chose to wear the navy blue coat I had bought after Thomas died. It was the first thing I ever bought for myself. Not for a holiday, not for a family picture, not for someone else's approval. Just mine. Megan helped me pin my hair back. Blanche walked beside me to the activity room where 3 local reporters were waiting, microphones and cameras in hand. I didn't use a pseudonym. I didn't blur my face. For the first time in my life, I wanted the world to know me. I stood up and spoke clearly. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 70 years old. I am a mother, a widow, and a woman who was almost robbed of her home by the people I once trusted most. There were no tears, no dramatic flares, just my voice, strong and measured. I spoke of decades of silence. I spoke of being reduced to a function. I spoke of the moment I remembered I had a name. The interview aired the next day and exploded. Hundreds of thousands of views, messages poured in from women across the country, letters, emails, voicemails. One woman wrote, I thought I had no choice. You helped me remember I do. Another said, you didn't just speak, you freed us. Blanche teased me that night. You're a lighthouse now, Evelyn. I smiled and answered softly, no. I'm just someone who finally turned the light back on. And then Laura asked the question that changed everything again. Remember the $50,000 you were going to give Daniel to help out? What if we use it to start a fund for seniors like you? Legal aid, emergency housing, real protections. I blinked. The idea landed like truth in my chest. Yes, I said, let his greed do something good for once. And that's how the Evelyn Grant was born. Not just as a fund, but as a reminder. You're never too old to take your life back, and your silence was never your destiny. 3 weeks later, I received a letter from Daniel's attorney. He was attempting to appeal the trust and challenge my mental competence, aiming to regain access to the property. The court dismissed the case that very afternoon. The reason was brief and resolute. The petitioner's claims are unsubstantiated and appear to be motivated by clear financial intent. I signed the court response with a steady hand, no tremble, no second-guessing. I never expected to start over at 70, but I did. Not by marrying again, not by moving into a better home, but by finally gaining something I had never truly possessed: a voice. Within the first month of launching the Evelyn Grant, we received over 100 letters. Some were from women trapped in homes that had been signed away to their children. Others were from single elders, emotionally manipulated and verbally abused by daughters-in-law, with no proof and no recourse. I couldn't manage every case personally, but I replied to every letter. Laura organized a volunteer legal team. Blanche helped screen the cases. I reviewed and signed the funding approvals. I had never been this busy in my life, and I had never felt so grounded. Every dollar went toward protecting her meaning all of us. And that moment on stage wasn't the end. If anything, it was just the beginning. I was later invited to speak at a formal city council hearing, an official session addressing the growing epidemic of financial abuse against elderly women. I remember standing tall behind the podium, my fingers gently trembling against the wood, not out of fear but out of the gravity of what I was about to say. The chamber lights felt hot on my face, but my voice stayed even. I told the room how easily love can morph into manipulation, how phrases like "you owe me" or "after all I've done for you" are sometimes less about gratitude and more about control. I looked into the crowd and said, "You cannot give away every piece of yourself simply because your child asks. That is not love. That is surrender disguised as sacrifice." The words hung in the air like a quiet bell. There was a stillness, then a wave of applause. And in the back row, I noticed a few young women dabbing their eyes with tissue. Their tears weren't falling for me. No. They were mourning the lives of their mothers, grandmothers, and perhaps even the quiet parts of themselves that had been chipped away by obligation. That night, as I returned to my modest nursing home room, Megan, our night nurse and one of the kindest souls I'd met, handed me a small, colorful postcard. It was from Nebraska. A woman I had never met wrote in blue ink, "I saw your story. You made something click. You helped me understand that saying no to your child is not betrayal, it's survival. It's permission to live." Her words pierced through me like sunlight through old lace. I pinned her message to the wall above my desk, right next to a faded photograph of Thomas, my late husband, my silent encourager through it all. The next morning I started writing my true will, not the kind filed by attorneys or witnessed in courtrooms. That paperwork was already done. No, this was something else, a declaration, a personal manifesto, a letter that would outlive whispers and shame. I began with, "My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm a mother, yes, but also a woman who once believed love meant handing over everything, even her savings, in the name of family." I paused, then wrote, "I no longer see that as noble. I see it for what it is, surrendering dignity in the name of obligation. From this moment forward, my legacy, my home, my money, my energy, will belong to those who value respect over relation. Blood alone is not a bond." We published that letter. It became the first cover story of our newly formed Civil Rights Club's monthly journal. Yes, we started our own publication. We called it Granny's Voice. The name was Blanche's idea. "Sounds like a blues song," he chuckled, eyes gleaming with quiet rebellion. Each edition featured one elder's awakening, a story of reclaiming control. We included legal resources for those being manipulated, mental health strategies for surviving guilt, and a regular full-page column titled "Saying No is Right." It became a mantra. In the beginning, we met in a borrowed church basement with flickering fluorescent lights and chipped folding chairs. But eventually, with modest grants and donations from those who believed in our cause, we secured our own space, a red brick building downtown that smelled faintly of books and lavender polish. We filled it with meaning. There was a cozy reading nook with vintage lamps, a small legal office for consultations, and a sunny kitchen we fondly named Slow Brew Cafe. There, the kettle was always whistling and the tea was always free for women who needed advice or simply a place to sit and breathe. Every morning I rose before dawn, slipping my feet into old slippers, reaching for my cane, and walking the few blocks to that building. My steps were careful, but my resolve was not. I sorted letters. I approved budgets. I met women in pain and left them a little lighter. I didn't have time to grow old. I had found a purpose. As for Daniel, my son, I only heard his name once more. It was a passing mention in a local newspaper. His tech company had come under federal investigation for tax fraud. His wife, Heather, had filed for divorce. They were both drowning in debt, and no one had seen them in months. He never wrote, never called, and I never waited. I didn't wish him harm, but I also didn't open the door to that chapter again. I folded that part of my life like a sweater worn thin, placed it gently in a drawer, and moved on. When Granny's Voice reached its 100th issue, we held a celebration. The nursing home hosted a spring fair in the garden. I wore the sky blue dress Blanche had chosen for me months earlier, the one with tiny white buttons that reminded me of my mother's apron. We set up a little table, covered it in flowers, and stacked copies of the special edition. The air was warm, the breeze soft. A young journalist approached me, barely older than my grandson. She held her notepad like it was made of glass. "Mrs. Carter," she asked, "what's the most important lesson you want others to take from your story?" I smiled. Not with bitterness, but with the kind of peace that only comes when you know you stood your ground. I said, I hope they learn how to say no without guilt, and then I hope they learn how to say, I deserve a new beginning. As I finished speaking, the wind caught the hem of my dress and tossed my silver hair into the sun. And in that moment, quiet, full, and deeply mine, I swear I heard Thomas's voice again, carried softly on the breeze like a song only I could hear.